Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here today. I am thrilled to have with me Catherine Giovanni, and I'm going to read just a little bit about her. She is a three-time award-winning best-selling author, speaker, and one of the original founders of the independent concierge industry. Catherine has authored over 12 books, including her latest release, The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power. We're going to talk about that. Catherine's journey from battling stage 3 breast cancer to navigating a challenging childhood has given her profound insights about resilience and forgiveness. So join us as Catherine shares these invaluable lessons and explores the transformative power of forgiveness. I talk about the transformative power of grief. We're going to have an interesting conversation. So everybody get ready. Here we go. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. So just so everyone can get to know you a little better, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Well, to quote some song lyrics, it's been a long, strange trip, hasn't it? I come from kind of a rough background, shall we say. My parents were very pickled. And in 1974, I was being horribly bullied in school. Lots of people can identify with that because I was different. And my parents got a horrible divorce and I tried to commit suicide. So I turned into one of those kids. You know who I'm talking about. Those kids draped in black. But I lived in New York and everybody wore black. So I'm not sure I should be saying that because everybody wore black. But, I kind of just bobbed through life, seriously, through my teenagerhood. And I was angry, like really angry. And then in the late 19, my mother fell down some stairs, broke her hip, and ended up in Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City. And even my mother couldn't get a gin and tonic in Lenox Hill Hospital. So she dried out and we sent her to rehab. And I spent the next 3 years, we became as close as sisters. We forgave each other. We did everything together. And then she died. And when she died, my world stopped. I literally stopped and was in a black fog of mourning for a little over a year. And I couldn't get out. I was going from my apartment to work to the grocery store to my apartment to work to grocery store. I quit drinking during those days. I've been sober for 34 years, but I knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to die like she did. So my mother's death, it was really when I found myself. It was the flashpoint. It was the change that I needed. And I got through the grief, and it took an awful long time because you have to kind of stop feeling sorry for yourself and say, okay, well, somehow I have to battle on alone. And then I met my husband, and then I became one of the founders of the independent concierge industry. And it all started because my mother died. And that's also when I discovered forgiveness. And it's completely transformative. Once you figure out forgiveness and you can forgive the people and you can forgive your mother for dying, that was big. Forgive yourself because you have the shoulds. I should have done this. I should have done that. She had cancer. There wasn't anything we could do. But that was a flashpoint.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I understand what you're saying about the forgiveness piece because I was so angry at Blaine for leaving me here with all of this. I had all these responsibilities that I didn't have before. And then I had to forgive myself for being mad at him because there was that too.
You're angry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You have to go through all those Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's, all those stages of grief, don't we? And everybody thinks there's a formula of which comes first and which comes second. It's like writing a book. I've written a lot of books and people think, well, I've got to come up with the title and then I've got to do the introduction and then I've got to write the first chapter. And no, you don't. Just start to write. Just whatever comes into your head. You could be the middle of the book. It doesn't matter. Just start writing. And grief is the same thing. The stages just come when they come, not necessarily in any particular order.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I always talk about grief as process that's uniquely designed for our own healing. And so
Right.
everyone's is very unique. There is no step-by-step program really. You can get all kinds of advice and there's all kinds of support out there to help you through, but your journey is your journey. It's yours. Yeah.
And that's the horrible thing. Nobody tells you how to get through it, right? I mean,
No.
when the person dies, it's like, okay, I need a manual.
Mhm.
I need a step-by-step guide on how to manage my way through the rest of my life. And there is none.
Mhm.
And actually, there are lots of books out there and lots of manuals, but none of them fit. You read one, you read three, you read 10, and you're still left going, well, they didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
And that's where the little bird in your shoulder comes in, your intuition. And the way to get out of that hole is to trust things you can't see, trust your gut. And the other way to get out of the hole is through forgiveness. But the thing about forgiveness, everybody listening or watching this broadcast on a 10 scale, with 10 being a dumpster fire, unforgivable, I don't want to forgive this person, and 1 being super easy, everybody is thinking of their number 10 person. So that's why everybody's scared of it, because they're all thinking of that dumpster fire. And it may not even be appropriate to forgive that person, whoever it is.
Mhm.
So in my world, you start with the easy ones. And the thing about forgiveness, it's kind of like grief, man, because everybody tells you you have to forgive, but nobody tells you how. Nobody. And then you got the people who really irritate me because they say forgive and forget. Okay, there might be a unicorn human being somewhere on the planet that is absolutely able to forget what happened to them, but I am not one of those people. So I will help you neutralize the memory, but I highly doubt you'll ever forget it.
Mhm. Yeah, and you talk about, you have a unique perspective on forgiveness. You have a
I
unique
do.
way of working through it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
In my book, it's got a whole bunch of worksheets and stuff for people. That's what, if that helps. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to sit down and write the people, places, and things. I did say places and things. Stay with me. And I want you to write down all these things. And then I want as many as you like. And then I want you to rate them from 1 to 10, with 10 being unforgivable. So now you've got your list, and you could have 5 5s, you could have 20 number 3. It doesn't bother me. But then now you have your list. Now, a few things about this list. First of all, just because I forgive you doesn't mean I want a relationship with you. Probably don't. And it's not like recovery. AA, I was in AA for many years, still am. And, there's that 4th step, so you have to make amends. Okay, I am an extroverted introvert, and I'm really not a fan of reaching out to somebody who I pissed off.
Mhm.
Really not a fan. So in my world, you don't have to. You can do this in the privacy of your own home, and nobody has to know. Because, you can even forgive dead people, because where they are or they're not is immaterial, because you're forgiving for you. Forgiveness is selfish. Forgiveness, in short, means I want you out of my head. Bottom line. That's what I want. I want you out of my head, and I don't want to think about you anymore. Let's take, and you could substitute, forgiveness for grief, because this is a good visual for both. Now, for anybody listening, I'm about to hold a very opaque coffee cup in front of my face. For the moment, when you first get angry, look at my body language. I can hold this cup off to the side. You and I are having a conversation. It's really easy. I can manage my resentment and my grief, and I can manage my anger. It's real easy. I don't need to forgive anybody. I have nobody to forgive. Okay, but the longer I hold on to this, the more it's going to be painful. So now I'm using both hands to hold up the cup. Now look at my body language. I could still kind of be involved with you in your life, but not really, because I'm starting to focus on the anger. It's starting to come into my zone right here, right? And if I keep holding on to it, now look at my body language. I can't see you at all. All I can see is the grief. So I'm talking about it. I'm thinking about it. It's in my head. It's all I can say. My friend world has gone down, because now who wants to be around somebody who's angry all the time, even if you spin the story funny? So what forgiveness is going to do, it's going to allow you to move through your resentment and anger so you can live your life again. Einstein proved, I have a whole chapter on science for any non-believers out there. Einstein proved that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just transforms from one thing to another. So when you get angry, what does everybody think? That they think it goes from your mouth and it dissipates magically in the universe. It does not. It hangs around your energy field. So the more you hold on to these things, the more you hold on to grief, the more you don't forgive yourself and forgive your loved one or your friends or whatever, the harder your life's going to be, because you're going to be living your life through a black cloud. And you won't be able to see things. You won't be able to see job opportunities. You won't be able to see anything. And forgiveness is going to release you. Now, one other thing, just because I forgive you doesn't mean you are correct. I'm not giving you a pass. You're still wrong, and I still dislike it. What it means is I'm going to be able to go on Facebook or social media or go to Thanksgiving dinner, and I can see you or your name, and there's no emotional charge. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's zero. I have no emotional charge anymore. And the secret sauce to the whole thing is the reason people don't stay forgiven is because you didn't forgive the energy around them. You didn't forgive the energy. So in the mantra I have, it's I forgive the person, the energy around the person, myself, the energy around me, and the energy around the whole thing. I forgave 1974. Why did I forgive 1974? Because that was the year I tried to commit suicide. And I did forgive all the players in that year, but I also forgave the energy around the year too, to take the charge out of it so I could start living my life. So I can look back into my childhood now and I can see the pockets of love. I can look at my mother's death and, it still hurts. I still miss her. And she died in 1990. But I can see the love that was there, and I could see the friendship that was there, and the bad stuff. I could dredge it up if you wanted me to, but I see the love now instead of the hate.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I love how you've paralleled grief and forgiveness. I think that's amazing. And I do want to talk more too about the whole journey and using your gut and your intuition to help guide you through that process.
Kind of how my friends and I figured this whole thing out. It's that little bird on your shoulder, isn't it? It's your intuition. Let's say you were bullied in school, just to use an example, before I talk about intuition, just so I can really show people. And you drive to work every day at 8 o'clock. And every day most days you hit that red light. And on that corner is your childhood grammar school where you were bullied in the playground. And every once in a while, you'll look to the left and you'll see it. And the memories come flooding back and you'll arrive at work grumpy because you remember your brain has been knocked back in time. So we need to remove that emotional charge. So I'm going to have you forgive. Remember, everything on our planet has energy around it, even the inanimate objects. And I forgave my childhood school. I forgave the energy around the school. I forgave the desk, the chair. I forgave the people who watched that didn't come in and help me. And I can't tell you how much that's going to help you by clearing the memory. And that's how you kind of get your number 10 person down to a 5 or a 6, because maybe I can't forgive the person, but I can forgive other parts of that memory. I can forgive the table, the bed, the chair, the building. I can forgive my childhood home. I can forgive the calendar day. There's other things you can forgive that's going to be just enough to allow you to move forward. Now, how did I learn to do that? I trust my intuition. I was born really intuitive. And I kept it a secret for most of my life, especially in school, because I was already weird. I didn't want to be stuffed into a locker, because if you hear voices in your head, they'll give you meds. Society has this really horrible, horrible habit of smacking the "you're absolutely crazy" as a bedbook sticker on anybody who just shows any intuition at all.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine in a Fortune 500 company, if you allowed everybody in that company to act on their intuition, because we all have it, we all have our special gifts. Can you imagine what that would do to the company? And can you imagine how brilliant that would be for everybody who worked there?
Yeah.
So trust your intuition. Men call it their gut. Women call it their intuition. You either see it, hear it, know it, or you just sense it. And those are really the 4 ways that everybody uses.
Mm-hmm.
That's as fast as I can say it.
Well, and when I was looking on your website, there was something about it was a question. Can you
Mhm.
identify, trust, and utilize the skill of trusting your gut or your intuition? And I
Mhm.
think that's such a good question because we all know we have those moments when we think, ooh, it's a good thing I didn't go that way. It's a good thing I listened to my intuition, right?
Right.
But can we trust that and can we start to utilize it in our life? That's the one I want to talk about.
The more you use it, the sharper it gets. Everybody on the planet has a talent. It's not just me. Everybody. I hear things. It's called clairaudient, if you want the fancy science name, but it just means I hear things. And I hear what I hear. I talk to myself. When I was a kid, I used to ask myself questions out loud to the room and I'd hear the answer in my head. And imagine my surprise when I found out that not everybody did that. and, and it was just me. And that's when I got scared. And I thought, well, I can't tell anybody. They'll put me in the hospital, the psych ward. It was the 1960s. So it was a different world back then. But everybody does it. If you can imagine your childhood bedroom in your mind right now, can you see the color of the walls? And if you had more than one childhood bedroom, just pick one, doesn't matter. If you can see the color of the walls, it kind of looks kind of like a movie in your head. That's clairvoyance. Now, it doesn't mean this is a Stephen King novel and you're going to start seeing dead people. That's not what it means. It means that you see the answer. You see it in the world around you. You see it in the newspaper. Okay, Google. Nobody reads newspapers anymore. You see it in a video. You see it in a book. You literally see the answers to your questions. And then you've got the empaths and the clairsentient people who feel their way through life. You ever walked into a room and it feels off?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
just feels off. You don't know why. You just walk in and something feels wrong. And you look at somebody and say, this doesn't feel right.
right. Yeah.
You're an empath. You feel your way through life. And that's how you get your answers. You shake somebody's hand, their resume looks great, they're dressed perfect, they're saying the right things. Just doesn't feel right. Something, and you can't pin it, and it's driving you crazy. You don't have to pin it. Just trust it and go on to the next candidate because it could be something that he or she was going to do down the line. Then you've got the clear knowing people. And I have a friend, Katie, who does this, and it's very hard to convince somebody who is clear cognizance that they're intuitive because they don't think they are. One minute they don't know the answer, and the next minute they just do.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say that's when they get that. If anybody who has kids has the mama voice, I'm including men. You got that dad voice, and you know the kids know they're in trouble because you get the voice, and you're kind of that's what it is. And when somebody's getting an intuitive message, if you really listen to it, their voice changes just a little bit. So it's a question of learning which style appeals to you. One of those styles appeal to everybody. And then it's just a matter of paying attention. And it's usually the smallest voice. And they're not going to tell you to go into traffic and get hit by a bus. It's the most loving, highest thought you can have. But it's a question of learning how to listen into whatever way you do it. It's not that I'm particularly smart that I could create an industry. I'm actually just a really good listener.
Mm-hmm.
And I followed that little bird on my shoulder and I trusted it when it told me where I should go. And I did.
Right. And I think for me, sometimes it gets clouded by what's happening in the mind and what's happening down here, right? It's like that confusion. Like, is this my mind thinking this, or is this actually a message coming in? And I'm getting better, but
If
it's
you hear it more than once, like I've been allergic to exercise my entire life. And in 2011, all of a sudden I felt like I had to take up jogging. Okay. I'm looking at the ceiling going, you're out of your mind crazy. I'm not going to do it, but I couldn't get it out of my head. You need to take up running. You need to take up running. And that's how I knew it was a guided thought because I couldn't get it out of my head. So I knew I had to do it. I knew it was the right thing to do. So I started the Couch to 5K running program for anybody thinking of taking up running. It's a brilliant program. And I eventually ran at 5K. don't be too impressed, because I half walked it and half run it. So it wasn't exactly that impressive.
Okay.
But the thing was, I went from a size 16 clothing down to an 8, and I knew the weight was coming off too fast. And sure enough, when I got down to the 8, I found a lump, and it was stage 3 breast cancer. And I've been clean now for 12 years. But the surgeons said that if I hadn't taken up running, it was in such a really odd spot, they never would have found it, because it didn't show up on any of the mammograms. So I'd be dead. You and I would be talking. So the little bird on my shoulder saved my life 3 times. Not that I'm counting, but I think that you'll know it's a true thought, because if you ignore it, if the universe wants you to do something, it's just going to keep yamming at you. So you'll know it's a true thought. Because I've often said to myself, am I making this up? Is this what I want to hear, or is this what I am hearing? And after a while, if you ask yourself that, you'll get the answer, and you'll know whether it's a true thought or not. If you just actually say, is this what I want to hear? Or is this what I am hearing? Or is this what I should hear? Give me a sign that this is what I should do. And they will.
Yeah, I love that advice. That's awesome. Yeah. So
And then forgive yourself.
yes. Yes.
Or if you can't forgive, forget. And I actually mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you can't forgive, then forgive yourself for not being able to forgive, and start there. It's a brilliant way of starting your forgiveness journey. And the reason I'm so into forgiveness, and do start with the 1s and work your way up to the 10s, is because you're going to start to feel better. You're going to start to notice things. The fog is going to start to lift. You might lose some weight. Why? Because you're going to start to pay attention and notice things. There's a reason to buy the book. You might lose some weight. You might get some money. You might get a new job. Why? Because you're going to be paying attention. You're going to notice things.
Yeah.
You get more friends. People want to be around you again.
Oh, absolutely. So when you go into the forgiveness, give us a sense of how you approach it.
Depends who I'm forgiving. It took a long time to get my parents from a 10 down to a forgivable level. You're not going to get a number 10 person down to a 1 overnight. It's going to take a minute. Like an onion, you've got to peel back those layers. And as you peel back those layers, you're probably get more memories are going to come up, and you forgive the memories and the things till you can get it down to a manageable level. But I am not a particularly religious person, but I did learn Bible verses when I was a kid. And one of them is Jesus is up on the cross, and he says, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. And to me, that means if I'm looking at a kid who's 5 years old and doesn't know trigonometry, I can't get mad at that child because they haven't learned it yet. Kind of have to give them a pass. So my parents did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. Was it good enough? No, of course not. But I can forgive them for it, because they didn't know any better. They were using the tools they knew at the time. And that is how I got my number 10 parents down to a more doable, I can walk around again, to like a 4 or 5. And eventually I was able to really forgive them completely. But it's a process. And forgiving yourself is probably the biggest part of the process. Forgiving yourself, because if you're your own number 10, that's going to be a journey in and of itself. But forgive yourself for not being able to forgive yourself. You can always start there.
Yeah, I like that. So you work with people one-on-one in groups. So if I came to you as a client, you talk about making a list of things, and then what do we do with that? What do you have, a certain modality that you work with, or how do you approach it?
I'm a simple soul. There's no songs to sing. There are no crystals. There's no incense to burn, unless of course you want to. That's fine with me. I don't care. But I'm a very simple soul, and it's a very simple little poem. And I'm gonna have you go through. We're gonna corral all your 1s, 2s, and 3s. And what I usually do is I'll sit in the middle of my bed, and I'll think of my number 1 person, and I'll imagine them standing in front of me. And then I will usually speak to them, saying everything I've always, remember, you're alone in the room. So you can say anything you want, and nobody's going to judge you, and nobody's going to see you. So let her rip, say whatever you want. And then put your hand in your heart, and then forgive them. And you're going to feel your shoulders might get a little lighter. I feel pressure in my solar plexus usually when I know I've really forgiven somebody. and it's going to really, really help. And if you think, well, this person was a 3 and you forgive them and you're still angry afterwards, okay, you might want to renumber that person into a 5 or a 6, wait 24 hours and let's make another pass to see if you can get that number down just a little bit. And the second time you do it, forgive the energy and forgive other pieces of the memory. So if you're married at cancer, like I was, I forgave the chemo chair. I forgave radiation. I forgave the doctors, the nurses. I forgave cancer itself and the energy around all these things. Did my anger down virtually immediately? Not even a little bit. It took weeks. And I did it very slowly in tiny little chunks. And that's how I approach it even in groups. Let's pick out a memory. Let's pick out not your number 10, but let's pick out one of the middle ones. And let's see if we can move that dial a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like practicing on the ones that are a little bit easier to go and then, yeah, work yourself up.
Here's a true story. It might stretch your brain a little bit, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I forgave my number 1 person, and it was a girl I used to know in grammar school. And I was so many years, I mean, dinosaurs were roaming when I was back there. So, I didn't even remember after all these years what we were angry about. So it was super easy to forgive her. And I hadn't spoken to her in over 30 years. So I forgave her. And I didn't think anything of it because I really meant it. That's why I have you put your hand in your heart, because it's the energy that's going to make the words are just for us humans. It's the energy behind your words that's going to make the difference. So I always put my hand in my heart to remind myself to do that. 2 hours later, it's a true story. 2 hours later, she calls me up on the phone. Almost fell out of my chair. And we made the appropriate noises and we did the appropriate stuff and we forgave each other and had the appropriate conversations and became friends again. But I'm just a curious little bear and I just freaking couldn't stand it. And I said, after all these years, why did you call me today of all days? She said, it's the darndest thing. A figurine you gave me in school fell off my dresser and landed in the middle of the room. And I thought maybe I should give you a call. The figurine flew off the shelf the exact moment when I was saying the forgiveness affirmation. Mm-hmm. So energy that has the power to move a figurine off a shelf 700 miles away. Can you imagine what that would do to your body?
Mm-hmm.
There was a study done by a Japanese gentleman. You can look it up online. His name is Matsumoto. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it's a Japanese water study. And it's right online. You'll be able to see the pictures. And I'm dumbing this down big time. He took 2 containers of water. 1 container of water, he spoke loving words to. He loved it. He spoke positive things to. The other container of water, the opposite. Negativity, nasty words, told her it was horrible, right? Then he put it under a microscope. And the water he said nasty things to had these black and brown formations, really ugly. The pictures are fascinating. And the water that he spoke love to had these beautiful crystal formations. Now, why am I telling you this? Because the human body is 98% water. So when you're grieving and when your self-talk is horrible and when you're yelling at people, think of what those words are doing to the water molecules in your body and why that's making you sick. So when they say anger is toxic, this is how it's toxic. You're literally changing the molecules in your body from light to dark. So forgiveness will stop that process and turn them back to the way they should be.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So this has been fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about your book and what's in the book.
The book is called, I think I'd know the answer by The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power. I do understand not everybody likes to read, so I have the audiobook available on Amazon as well as the paperback and the ebook. And you can get it on Amazon or you can go to my website at catherinegiovanni.com. And Catherine is spelled, thanks to my mother, very strangely. Thanks, Mom. Katharine Giovanni.com.
Awesome.
And it's short too, because I think, I really think people don't have a very large attention span anymore. None of us do. So I purposely kept it short. And it's the first book of 3. I've got 2 more behind it on the same subject.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Whoever's listening, you can do this. You can get out of that dark room and that dark closet you've put yourself into. And I know you're all facing this brick wall, and some of you don't even want to go around it at this point, but there's a way around the wall. Most people will say, let's break through the wall. Let's give you some tools to do it. Me, I think take a few bricks out of the wall and then walk around the dumb thing, keep going and circle back later when you can. And if you never circle back, that's completely fine with me. As I said, some people you don't have to forgive because you don't. Forgive yourself, forgive anything else in that memory, and keep going. Forgive them for dying. There's always something you can forgive that's going to allow you to stand up again and live your life, because forgiveness is going to allow you to be the person you were always meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you again for taking the time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. And I want to thank everyone for watching, and bye for now.